Chapter 9 The Living Inferno. It was time to bring back the riddle, to search for their next destination. The last portal was carried along the moment the gods gave up being strong, Drake read. One that would open far and far back, in an old stone dome where bodies would stack. A place where many souls fought for a spot for freedom, while others simply watched until they could mislead them. And that's our destination. But there's more, isn't there? Julia pointed out. Drake continued. All head north until an opening will form. Come forth and bring us a firestorm. These destinations form 6 portals of lead. One of them, the portal of death. All is heading north. I'm assuming that means the monsters, Calypso said. The firestorm part worries me, Haru said. Not the fact that the riddle is talking about the last portal being the literal portal of death? Drake asked. That too. The last portal was carried along the moments the gods gave up being strong. I honestly do not know what that implies, Calypso said. Why would the gods give up on their strength? But they did, Drake said. When they found out they're not immortal anymore, or when they entered this world and realized they had no powers here, they rendered themselves useless. I don't think Haven and Pi would give up just like that, Drake, Eula pointed out. They've learned to do the right thing for years. They'll be here when we need them. Yeah, you're probably right. But it doesn't help us with the riddle. Anyone has an idea? Everyone moved their head, nodding no. Well, that's a first. There was not a place in the world where the number of monsters was still increasing. It was like they had already closed every single portal. The armies around the world managed to protect their world, and the threat turned out to be not that much of a threat. Whatever made it possible for the monsters to enter Drake's world, in the end, it had no real destructive effect. Because it seemed to be over. Everyone decided to go home. They could not for the life of them figure out the lost clue and contemplated why it was even necessary. Before they did, they met up with the president in New York. The monsters were defeated and it was safe to go there again. He wanted to reward everyone with a token of gratitude. Everyone preferred to rest first, so they went home. Drake told the president that he didn't want that reward, seeing as the riddle had not yet been completed. The president gave them presidential tickets to take on a plane home. First, they were given a place to sleep. It had been a tiring day and a tiring adventure. Everyone fell asleep within a few seconds. But Drake still laid awake, thinking about what they were missing. The next day, Drake summoned the portal and gave Arian, Savara, and Hank a way to return to Dragonia. Afterwards, the others headed to the closest airport. The president, and of course his bodyguards, had joined up and was going with them. This allowed them to bring their weapons on the plane. I don't like this. I really do not, Lenny said as the plane was ascending. Don't worry, Lenny. It's completely safe, Darren said. I quite like this, actually, Calypso said unexpectedly. Although being stared at all the time is less comfortable. A businessman was looking at Lenny with a furious look. The moment Lenny looked at him, the man looked away. Wait a second, Lenny said. You are the guy who called us midgets. What the hell are you freaks doing on this high-class plane? The man asked furiously. You are not wanted here. Get off our planet. The businessman did not think his accusations through. Lenny walked over the legs of arrows and headed for the businessman with his own furious expression. Right before he reached him, Lenny readied his axe. Get your disgusting medieval metallic murder weapon away from me. The man rose up and was forced to climb over his chair backwards, ending up at the feet of Chop and Doozle. He startled and tried to get up and headed for the aisle. He stopped when he almost bumped into someone. And not just someone. It was the president who looked at him with a fierce look, his arms crossed. He did not allow the man to leave. At first, the man was a bit shocked to see the president, apparently not having noticed him or his bodyguards entering the plane. Midgets, the president said. Mr. President, I have said no such thing. A dozen trustworthy witnesses are still willing to lie. The businessman turned around and ran towards the toilet cabin. Lenny came after him. The businessman locked himself inside the cabin. You are not getting away. Lenny started smashing the door in. A bodyguard wanted to step in, but the president sent him to leave it. Send the repair funds to this airline. That door isn't us. Dare to call us midgets again, Lenny continued rampaging. After the door was knocked down, Lenny stopped intimidating the man and let him go. I need a Fanta, he said as he walked back. Is he alright? Maya asked, worried about the man. Mr. Fancy Pants is fine. I think you just cost him his fancy pants, Harry said humorously. The captain's voice was heard and the scene was put to hold. Dear passengers, due to terrible unpredicted weather, we unfortunately have to divert from our original course, and we must land. We will be arriving at Rome Airport in a few minutes. Please put on your seatbelts, we might be expecting some turbulence. Despite what the people were told to do, the businessman was too terrified to get out of the doorless toilet cabin. Everyone else took a seat and put on their seatbelts. They waited until the plane would land. After the plane landed, they had to change their plans. So we wait? Maya asked. You crazy? We're in Rome, Julia said. Let's go do something fun. The president's decision to keep following them home was one made because he was so thankful for what they did for the world. Therefore, he remained at their side for the time being. They agreed to take a different plane later during the day. The president remained in a fancy hotel. They were given some money to spend but still had to switch the dollars to euros. Their day in Rome was a joy. The bad weather had magically somehow gone away. They visited the St. Peter's Basilica, the Trevi Fountain, the Roman Forum, Castel San Angelo, and much more that day. Rome was big, therefore no one could see everything of Rome in a day. After their feet could barely carry themselves, the day was coming to an end. But what would a trip to Rome be if they didn't visit the Colosseum? As the sun started going under, they had one more construction to visit. After a while, they made it to the area surrounding the Colosseum. In the distance, they could see the dome. Unfortunately, their money was running out. Only 4 could enter. Seeing as the dwarves didn't really care for the Roman culture or history, they volunteered to wait outside. Calypso mentioned she was exhausted and didn't mind taking a seat outside and resting for a bit. Darren had during his travels seen Rome before, and actually already set foot in the Colosseum once in his life. Doug was called in by the president, supposedly a surprise was awaiting him, and Errol simply didn't say anything, so he kind of lost his chance. So Drake, Haru, Julia, and Maya could enter without a problem. The road was long, but at last they got in. They walked over old sandstone paths and had a wide view. It looked even bigger than it did from the outside. There were bits of ruins at the bottom and openings from which lions and such were let in during the gladiator fights back in the day. Drake still felt troubled, and Julia noticed he was unable to enjoy the sightings. You still on about that? Julia asked him. I know that the world has been freed, but I just cannot help thinking that we're missing something essential. Drake reached for the riddle again and started repeating the lines. The last portal was carried along, the moments the gods gave up being strong, one that would open far and far back in an old stone dome where bodies would stack, a place where many souls fought for a spot for freedom, while others simply watched until they could mislead them. All head north until an opening will form, come forth and bring us a firestorm. These destinations form 6 portals of lead, one of them, the portal of death. So, did repeating it help? Not in the slightest, Drake answered, disappointed. I recommend dropping it for now, Drake, Haru said. There's no use in cracking your skull open trying to solve that lost part if there's no danger to be found anywhere. What if something happens and we're too late because we didn't know where to go? We've battled a kraken. Is there something worse than that? Believe me, our world has the needs to defend itself. It has proven to be capable of defeating this threat, and I doubt they could fail at it. You're right, I'm sorry. I'm just tired. That's understandable. Now, shall we go? This dome is kind of giving me the creeps. What did you say? Drake interrupted suddenly. I asked if we could go, Harold answered confused. After that this dome is giving me the creeps? Dome? Suddenly, Julia and Maya gained the same expression as Drake and looked at each other in astonishment. Haru was still unsure of what Drake was talking about. I am afraid we did not end up here by chance. It has to be. The storm forced the plane to land. It was not just a regular storm. You're saying something brought us here? Maya said. What are you guys onto? I don't get it, Haru said. In an old stone dome where bodies would stack, a place where many souls fought for a spot for freedom while others simply watched until they could mislead them. Don't you get it, Haru? The last destination is the very dome we're standing in. Well, would you look at that? Careful, we might get unexpected visitors. But where's the portal? Julia asked. Maybe underground again? Maya answered. They waited for anything suspicious, but nothing happened. How the heck did a storm carry us to where we needed to go? Maya asked. Drake looked up at Maya. He thought he was onto something. Okay, now I definitely don't like it here. Can we please get out as fast as possible? Harold asked. Carried, Drake mumbled. What? Maya said. Drake looked at Julia, who had already figured it out. She looked at Drake with great fear, and this made Drake sure of what the riddle was talking about. Drake was shocked with the realization. At first, he was unsure of how to explain it to the others. Haru, remember when we defeated Mordor for the first time and we traveled to the mountains afterwards? Of course. Remember what I was given? Remember what I was given? Drake was having trouble explaining the situation. He was still shocked and feared something terrible. From Haven? The gods gave up being the strongest beings the moment they rewarded us with their powers, their strength. Haru finally realized what Drake was trying to say. Maya did too, even though she didn't know the entire story of what happened back then. They gave me a portal. Each of their expressions changed drastically, and they all feared something terrible that I have carried along from the start. It was quiet, but eventually Haru knew how to break the silence and attention. So what? No one expected anyone to say that. So what? What does it matter? Why even discuss this? You're not letting monsters in. Why would we even try to do what you're most likely going to tell us to do? I know what you're going to say, and you think any of us is going to do something like that? Screw it. Haru's words were supposed to comfort Drake, but instead something completely different happened. Before Drake could react, he started staring into the distance. His pupils had suddenly changed color and seemed almost bloodshot. Oh, Haru, such a gullible mind, Drake said unexpectedly. Drake walked forward and placed his hand on his chest. Drake, no! Julia shouted, but it was too late. A purple ball of light exited Drake's body and formed a portal a few meters in front of them. Drake's bloodshot pupils regained their original color and Drake collapsed at the spot. Julia tried to help him up. Drake, you alright? She asked. What the hell was that? Haru asked, confused. What was what? Drake replied, regaining consciousness. What happened? Drake noticed the portal. Did I do that? The portal started changing color. The purple particles changed into red ones and the particles changed into flames. The portal started growing and even started emitting flames, barely missing the four. The people visiting the Colosseum were looking at the scenery, unsure of what was to come. And finally, out of the portal, a creature appeared. Engulfed in flames, a monster arose. First, a hand grasped the side of the portal, with dark red claws and flaming skin. Two horns reached through the portal, and a vicious face with bright, fiery eyes appeared. The flaming monster fully passed through the portal, spreading its two red dragon wings. Its mouth was filled with lava, dripping where it had no teeth. At the sight of the massive monstrosity, everyone fled the scene screaming. The four went and hid behind the inner walls of the Colosseum. The monster looked around, slowly turning its head, looking at the people running away, but it was not after them. And unlike the other occasions, the portal already closed. Drake, report, Julia whispered. This is bad, he said. I know it is, but what is that? That is the Balrog. Drake seemed more terrified than the others. Not that they weren't, but it was because he knew exactly what a creature such as the Balrog was capable of. A living inferno. The Balrog summoned a scourge of fire, a signature weapon the Balrog wields in mythologies. The monster roared angrily, calling out one particular name. Drake! It can talk? Julia said, surprised. Apparently. Where are you? So, report? What do you mean, report? Balrog, biggest, meanest demon in the whole bloody underworld. Impenetrable body of flames, for God's sake, and let's not forget a scorching scourge of fire. Well, shoot. The Balrog roared again and started waving around its scourge, destroying several ruins of the Colosseum. Maya managed to duck in time, but his scream gave away their position. So there you are, the Balrog spoke. Run, Drake shouted. You cannot run from me. It tried to hit them with its scourge, but missed when the others managed to jump in time. The next attack could only be dodged if they jumped down, so when they did, they landed on the bottom floor of the Colosseum. Except for Haru, who managed to remain on the upper floor. Everyone hid, and when the Balrog lost them, it started waving around with its weapon aimlessly. If we don't do something now, we'll get burnt alive, Juliet pointed out. The scourge barely missed her. Ouch! Drake saw what happened and realized something. Fire, he murmured. Drake stepped forward and faced the Balrog. Foolish child. Drake pointed with his hand at the monster and made a fist. He tried to extinguish the monster's flames, and somehow he managed to. The monster became colder and its body lost most of its glow. Eventually, the creature was just a red and black colored monster, standing still, as if there was no danger. You carry no inferno, the Balrog spoke. You carry only a flame. It started grinning. Something wasn't right. You carry nothing but light. I am perpetual darkness. Guys, back off, Drake said, scared. I am the living inferno. The Balrog's fire came back entirely, and it emitted flames into all directions. The Balrog seemed like a devil impossible to defeat, and the hardest opponent so far. Everyone started running, unsure of what to do. Haru suddenly decided to throw his boomerang, which was made of wood and iron, an unwise idea. Haru, no! Drake reacted quickly and aimed at the shoulder of the Balrog and made a fist again. He made a twist with his hand and extinguished the flames on his shoulder. Drake chose the right spot just in time as the boomerang hit the monster in its shoulder right after the flames disappeared. It's gonna melt! Oops. The Balrog was hurt, roared, and grasped the boomerang. Drake reacted in time to extinguish the flames on his hand before the boomerang was grabbed and thrown away. You really think you can extinguish what is the flames of hell? No, but perhaps just temporarily, Drake reacted. At that moment, Drake had already aimed for its head and extinguished the flames before Julia landed her surprise attack. The arrow that she shot was heading for the Balrog's head, but the monster was clever. It turned around in less than a second, catching the arrow with its hand. The arrow went up in flames. You've got to be kidding me, Julia said. The Balrog switched to a more aggressive offense. It started waving around with a flaming scourge in an attempt to hit Drake. Drake kept dodging the attacks and deflecting the flames coming his way. The monster switched over to a feature Drake was unfamiliar with, as it suddenly started spitting out a beam of fire. The flames hit the earth and scorched the ground, while Drake ran for his life. Before things really took a turn for the worse, aid was given. At the scenery, the dwarves Calypso, Darren, and Errol showed up at last. Well, this proves a challenge, Chop said, a bit worried, yet slightly courageous. Split up, everyone, Calypso commanded. Drake, the Balrog kept blaring. As everyone decided to split up, they started to attack. Though a few things had changed. Chomp stomped on the ground and a boulder erupted from the earth. He moved his arm and the boulder made its way towards the Balrog. Unfortunately, the monster simply caught the boulder with giant claws and crushed it. Since when can you do that? Drake asked him. Gift from Haven and Pie. They just decided to say hi. Conveniently enough, right after they had to say goodbye. And the award for best haiku goes to, Haru said jokingly. Well, that's quite the gift, you know, Drake said. Isn't it crazy? As Chop was distracted for a moment, the flaming scorch barely missed him. His hair started catching on fire for a moment, but Drake put it out immediately. Duzel came forward and went in for the attack. He was carrying a wooden shield, but even though it seemed useless, he was not just gifted a shield. Duzel could move the wooden item anywhere he wanted, and compress or shape the wood anyhow he wanted. He was given the capability of wood bending, but it was not very useful against the infernal being, unless Drake could time his fire bending correctly. Lawrence was given a crossbow that did not have to be reloaded. It kept regenerating the arrows in a matter of milliseconds. It was an unusual gift, and quite a lot more tactical than any other weapon. Your enchantments are gifted by mortal beings, just like yourself, the Balrog continued. Your puny gods are a futile existence, and without their powers, they are too afraid to fight. For once, what the monster said made sense. Drake felt disappointed but didn't blame Haven and Pie for skipping the fight. After all, after years of being invincible, being human all of a sudden had to be terrifying. And they did help by gifting those who deserved it powers and items that the gods were capable of giving away. The Balrog started spinning fire again and formed a circle of burnt earth around him. Calypso had received something unusual, a water container that could regenerate a never-ending source of water, one of Pie's creations. She used it to extinguish the circle of fire. Drake, Julia shouted. She managed to get Drake's attention. Now! Julia and Maya had climbed onto a next elevation and started running. Drake extinguished the fire on the Balrog's head immediately, before both Julia and Maya managed to hang on to each of its horns. Julia held on with one hand and stuck an arrow in the side of the Balrog's head, while Maya waved her iron fan and got a few of the feathers stuck in the other side of its head. The Balrog stopped for a bit, and his look changed to even more anger. Get off! Calypso shouted loudly. Julia and Maya let go before they were snatched by the Balrog's arms. The arrow and feathers stuck in its head didn't do a thing, and when the fire returned, the arrow melted away before the feathers returned to Maya's fan. We cannot pierce him, Calypso continued. What can we do? Harold asked. Julia and Maya hit the ground hard, but Julia was hurt worse. Before the Balrog opened its mouth and started spitting fire, Drake came in between and blocked the fire. He used his other hand to reach out for Julia. She looked at him and felt thankful. Drake's heroic mind moved her. Thank you, she said. The fire stopped right as Drake was knocked a few meters away by the Balrog's arm. Drake! He crashed into a pillar and fell to the ground. As the demon destroyed everything around itself in a furious rage, the defenders tried their very best to come up with a solution. But they had never faced something as invincible as this. Chop kept trying to trap the monster in the ground, but it wasn't strong enough. Calypso tried to drown the monster in water, but even that had no effect. Haru's airbending didn't help much either. Nothing could extinguish the demon's eternal fire. No element can affect me. None can hurt me. I am your doom, and I will burn your world to ashes, Drake. Drake was still trying to get up. He was hurt badly. What is it you want from me? Why is it always me? The Balrog grinned back at Drake but didn't answer his question. Receive your death with gratefulness. Drake looked at his friends. Everyone was scared. Some were hurt, everyone was desperate, and they were all looking at him. This made Drake realize something. It wasn't whether he was chosen or not. His friends relied on him. And not just that, they were in danger, and there was nothing more important to him than fighting for the lives of his friends. No! Drake got up and pointed his hands forward. A gigantic beam of flames was summoned from the palm of his hand and engulfed the Balrog, but the monster kept remaining unharmed and spoke through all of it. Fire, earth, water, air, metal, wood, none of this can harm me. You are weak. I have something you have not, Drake shouted. Drake's friends regrouped and formed up behind him. You have nothing, the Balrog blared. The Balrog released a major explosion of flames, reaching throughout the entirety of the Colosseum. Drake spread his arms and protected everyone behind him. Resistance is futile, the Balrog kept blaring. An attempt to protect my friends is never futile. Drake started bending fire again, and because everyone was so moved by his words, they joined him. Howard took a few steps and eventually stood next to Drake on his left. He raised his arms and started bending air, sending a strong force of wind towards the Balrog. Calypso approached as well and joined Drake on his right. She moved the water forwards and encased the Balrog with a dome of water, moving the water like a raging river. Chop took a few steps forward and joined them right next to Calypso. He raised rocks and sand from the ground up and formed a spherical cage of earth around the Balrog. The monster roared loudly, full of anger and still sure he was unbeatable. But something was changing. The elements that they were using merged and formed a purple-colored ray. What is this? Hold on, Drake shouted. No, this can't be. The Balrog tried to push back, but couldn't. It had become unable to move or to attack. No, I am death. I am destruction. I am a firestorm. The demon became engulfed by purple particles and its flames had quenched. I am the Living Inferno! A sudden explosion of particles before everything turned quiet. Purple particles filled the entire Colosseum. Everyone was blown backwards, and after hitting the ground, they tried to get up. While the particles slowly descended and dissolved, the Balrog was vanquished. The final monster was defeated. But how? The elements of fire, air, water, and earth merged into something more powerful, something extraordinary. But no one knew what it meant. None had ever seen anything like it. Or had someone?